Hiya. So this is the Willow tutorial video. This goes with the Willow kits, which is a tassel earring where it is a peyote top with delica beads, cylinder beads, and it is a tassel bottom. Okay, so this color palette may not be the exact color palette you have, but what you're going to do on yours, this is the new color palette for this video I'm going to do, when you're going along on yours and you're doing your peyote, you can cut it off like this as you go. On your particular paper, there will be arrows showing you you're going down this way, arrows showing you you're going up this way, down, up, and you're going one at a time on this peyote section, okay? So let's hop in. I threaded my needle. You should have 2 pages of step-by-step instructions. They are super helpful, I hope. And this video is just to kind of accompany that. So you're going to start off by putting a stopper bead at the end of your thread. I would leave a couple inches on there. Doesn't need to be a huge amount. 2-3 inches, I think I said in the kit instructions. And we're just doing a little simple tie on there. That's going to help you keep your tension as we do this. So the way that we're working the tube, we're not doing tubular peyote for this because when we're attaching our fringe, it's easier to create it as flat peyote and then add your fringe and then sew up your tube. Ta-da! Learning something new already. Or maybe you're not, maybe you knew that already. So we're starting off with 20 beads because that's basically our first and second row of the peyote stitch section. These beads are some of my favorite. They're the Picasso finish bead. We're doing 5, 10, 15, 20. So we're starting off with 20 beads. Okay, so that makes our first little side of ours. And you're going to grab 1 bead for your first, it's your first like new row. You're going to keep everything pushed down to the end, like I'm so expertly doing right now. Pushing everything down to the end. And you're going to go through your second bead. So that things are sitting together like that, okay? And now you're going to keep skipping every other bead. So we just added a bead, so we're skipping that one we just went through. We're skipping the one after it. So every other bead we're going to go through and add a bead. Do, 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 do. I feel like I should have hold music here. Some of my other videos I sit and like yatter away as we're doing this. Some videos I pretend to sing for you, which if you've seen those, you'd probably rather I yatter away at you. So you can see what we're forming here. So this is our peyote stitch. Sometimes I get asked why brick stitch and peyote stitch look so similar, and it's because the idea is similar. You're offsetting beads row to row. I love peyote stitch. I started off doing like right angle weave and brick stitch and stuff like that when I was really young, and I learned peyote when the internet came around, and I was oh, my printer is making some fun sounds. Cool. Yeah, when the internet came around, I learned peyote and fell deeply in love with it and started buying all of the delicas I could find, which were not many colors at the time, especially around where I lived. And I love the slow, purposeful patterning of peyote. I love that you're taking 1 bead at a time and building this. Another thing I love about it Sorry, I was kind of going off the screen there. Another thing I love about it is you're not putting a lot of tension on the beads when you're creating peyote. When you do things like brick stitch, you're putting a lot of tension on the threads. And in peyote, you have so much room in these cylinder beads to pass through that you're not piercing threads, you're not doing that kind of stuff as often. So it's a really fun creative process. So anyway, we've done our first new row. I like to pull my stopper bead in a little bit there. That way I can see my tension is nice, everything's sitting straight. So every time you start a row, this is even count peyote. So each time you get to the end, it's perfectly situated to add your bead and go through that last one on the previous row kind of thing. So you're just, this is where it's nice and quick and fun. Now, a couple of the kits coming up, because you're just going to keep adding a bead between all these little sections one at a time. Now there's a bunch of like speed peyote type stitches. I personally love beading because I like the slow, methodical process. I like sitting and letting my thoughts drift, and I like, obviously, I'm like talking like crazy when I do these. Not when I'm by myself, though. I listen to videos, but anyway, or listen to podcasts. Anywho, so there is speed peyote beading. I am not a fan because I like the process of beading. I like the intentional one bead by one bead method. If you want to learn about that, feel free. I'm sure there's 900 different YouTube videos about that. So each time we get to the end, we're adding one to start our next row, and you're giving your thread a really good pull to make sure that you're keeping your tension nice and snug. And I'm pulling on my stopper bead to make sure, because you'll be able to tell it kind of straightens out when you do that and sits. So as I'm completing this row, it'll pull it tighter again. And you don't want to like pull it within an inch of its life. You want to have it real snug though on peyote stitch, which if I was paying attention, I wouldn't have gone through the wrong bead. All right, so this is what you do when you go through the wrong bead. you do not, I very, very, very rarely suggest that you push your needle back through your piece to get it out. I 99.9% of the time suggest that you take your needle off and pull your thread back out to avoid piercing your threads and creating more problems for yourself as you are putting all this time into your beadwork. So you're going to keep going one at a time until you have a total of, I think it's 16 rows total, which is actually 8 beads across in each row. Okay, each horizontal row. So feel free to pay attention to your own work and keep adding the one bead at a time. It is really handy if you have your one of the other kits where there's a pattern. It's going to be really handy for you to take a little piece of paper and lay it down on the grid for this section so that you can pay attention to which color bead you're adding at a time here. I just caught myself. Caught my own thread there. So if it's a patterned one, because the next one's going to be a patterned one, and you're going through this section, take something and lay it down here, because there will be arrows pointing each direction, right? So you can sit and you'll know, and you'll get to know, like, I'm putting a purple one between a red and an orange, or I'm putting purple through my purple, right? So you'll get to know as you're understanding the pattern more, you'll get to know what to watch for as you're adding your bead. This one is going to go between these two, right? And whatever colors those are. Okay, so I'm going to keep beating this up, but this video is about to like go into hyperspeed. So I'll add some sweet, sweet tunes over top of this part. Boop, 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 boop. I'm really glad that we can't actually bead this quick because it would take a lot of the enjoyment out of it. Okay. Boop-a-doo, boop-a-doo, boop, 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 boop-a-doo, boop, boop-a-doo, 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 boop, boop-a-doo, boop, boop-a-doo, boop-a-doo. Almost done. Almost got it. And here we go. Okay. So we're at the end of our top section. Big long tail with our needle on it, short tail with our little stopper bead on it. Ta-da! So we're going to remove our needle from this and we're just going to let that hang there. Okay. And we are now starting with our new piece of thread. So you have your fringe threads and you have your woven threads. The woven threads are shorter to do this section and your fringe threads are longer. So we're going to start with our fringe thread section. And I'm just going to pause this for a sec. I was just reading my own instructions to make sure I match them when I'm explaining what to do to you. To do to you? When I'm explaining to you what to do. Okay, so we're starting this at the opposite corner that our tail is at. Okay, so depending on how you like to hold your work, whichever way you want to hold your work is just totally fine. I've drawn everything out this way. So we're going to start by adding a little hitch knot onto our thread bridge. So we're going to go to the thread bridge that is between bead 2 and bead 3. Okay. I just went under that little thread bridge there. If you haven't heard me or somebody else talk about a thread bridge, it's the little piece of thread that bridges between each bead here. So thread bridge is right there, thread bridge, thread bridge. So we're going to do a little loop-de-loop around this. So I'm just going under it again, threading my needle through that loop. To attach it, I'm going to go up through bead number 3. Okay. My tail is going to end up down this way, but I'm going up through bead number 3, up through the one above that towards my selvage edge, the direction I'm working. Now I'm going to go down the one next to that and down the very edge one. And now we're going to start our fringe. So that's secured on there. You're going to have a look at your pattern. So on your pattern, it doesn't really matter which side you start at, just that you're consistent. So I've done this one up just for me to work off of it. You'll see numbers on yours. Each number at the bottom there is how many beads in a row of that color. If there is no number, it means just one bead. So 14 of the one color, then 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and then 9 of this next color in this example. So on yours, it's going to show that. Here, this again is just my little working paper that I'm going off of. So intentionally in this pattern, I'm using size 11 round beads and size 11 delica beads. Delicas are quite a bit smaller than the round beads. I have a mix of 3 different kinds of beads here on my mat. So I actually have Miyuki delicas. I have Miyuki rounds, which you can see are a little wider and a little stouter than the delicas. And then the other 3 colors are Tohos in this particular pattern. And you can see the Tohos are the same width as the Miyukis, but they're a little stouter, thicker. I use stouter for both of the smaller and the larger. You're welcome. Just nothing but clarity here. So we've attached and we're going to start adding our fringe. You're going to follow your pattern. So on mine, I have a bunch of this color. Boopity boop boop. On yours, it might be something, it will be, could be something completely different. So I have 14 of this color. I have 1 of that, 2 of this, one of that, two of this, one of that, two of this, one of that, and then I have 9 of these ones. 9. Okay, so once you have all your fringe beads on there, you're pushing them all up. Doop doop doo. You're gonna skip the last bead on there. Can you see that okay? Yeah. You're gonna skip that last bead on there and you're gonna go up through the other beads. And some people really love long beading needles for this. I prefer the needle size that I send you in all the kits. It's a middle size needle. It's not crazy long. It's not super short. It is Goldilocks' favorite. It's just right. Sorry. I'll be here the whole video acting like this, guys. Again, you'll be really glad that I fast forward sections. Anywho, so what I did to move on to the next one, per your diagram that you have, you go up and over and down through this next one, okay? So now, going by your pattern, you're going to add your next beads, whatever colors those are. So yours might be different than mine, whatever amount it is that you want on there. Ooh, I don't like that first little guy. He looks a little runty on the side, so I'm going to get rid of him. Nope. I don't like him either, so we're going to put him in the little tray to get rid of. As you go, don't hesitate to cull your beads for ones you like and don't like. That's why I have that little tray there, because nobody's perfect. But some of these beads are just not going to make it into this piece or other pieces, which is why they have a little tray that I get rid of them. So, don't like that second one either. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So you can see as you're going, the tail's getting a bit longer. And in this particular design, it'll get longer and then start going shorter again. So keep going with your fringe. See, I'm going back up through my, oops. Now you can see I'm going back up through that foundation bead. My tail from when I started my fringe is getting caught up. And I'm just pulling this. So I'm pulling on my thread. And I'm rolling my beads on my mat just to give them good tension. Going down through the next one, that's where this tail is. So once I show you how I hide the tail in here, then this video is going to kind of fast forward through my beading until we get to that end. Okay. So we're adding our big color block section here. Boopity boop boop. Me saying boopity boop boop is trying not to go off on yet another tangent of conversation that you maybe don't care about. I think it's going to be fun to get back to doing in-person lessons with people, because I'll tell you it's like a 2-hour lesson, but to allow time for 5 because we can sit and chit-chat and ask lots of questions as we go, which I really like that. I really like the in-person teaching. So yeah, I'm trying to translate as much of that to the videos as possible, because, you know, a few years back, we all kind of had to stay home. So again, you're skipping that bottom bead. You're going up through your beads. Now, I do that first section. I'm going to pull it down a little bit. I'm going to give some space on these ones. My tail from when I started this, I'm going to lay it down next to my thread that began this particular finger fringe, and I'm going to start feeding beads up towards the top. Okay, so I've got like 1 inch of beads there covering that tail. move that up over it. And then I'm going to keep going up through my beads. Now I'm pushing upwards with my needle so that I'm trying not to pierce my thread that's in there, just because it'll weaken it a bit, and any little weak spots, you know, over time might wear away. So we're pulling that nice and snug down through the next one to keep going. Okay, so you keep going, adding your fringe, giving it a little roll in our fingers. You can see it actually created a bit of gap there. So I'm going to give it a little pull so that it sits nicely. Okay, so keep going with your fringe, and I'm going to meet you down at this end. Boopity boo, da da da, pick up those, get that in there, da, da, a little bit more of these, get some of those, got this, some more of these, got some of those. Make sure to be picky with the ones you're picking when you're doing your fringe. You're gonna love it. Okay, so as we're coming back up to our piece here, we're making sure to keep our tail from our woven section off to the side. We're coming up through, of course, we're coming up through the same bead we went down through, because the thread didn't get enough attention. Now that it's not fast forwarded, it's getting knotted, because it wants you to look at it and say, hi, look at that. We all make mistakes and threads get knotted, and that's normal. Okay, so now we are on step 10. We're on step 10. We're going to get our little piece knotted in here. So I'm going back down through the previous one. Okay. I'm going to go around my thread bridge. So I've made sure all my fringe is nice and taut. Just gonna throw it around a few times. That was not on purpose. I'm going up through my thread bridge here on my piece. Now it doesn't matter if you go between the first and second bead or second and third. I like to go between the second and third because it's like on the far side in towards my work more. I'm doing a hitch, so I'm going through that loop with my needle, and then I'm pulling it snug and pulling it back towards my second little finger of fringe. So the knot lies on that open thread bridge section. It can kind of hide inside that bead. And I'm now going to go down through my beads just for like an inch of it. Okay, so I like to cut my little extra tails at this point. You are not going to cut the tail that is part of your woven section, but I have two tails that are in my actual the fingers of my fringe. You can cut them now, you can cut them later, whatever works for you. Do not cut the one that comes out of your woven section. So I'm just going to go snip, and then I have another one over here, snip. That way they're not getting tangled up in what I'm doing. Okay. I do not save and reuse those threads because they've been worked and moved around quite a lot, so they're not going to be great friends on the next piece. So I'm grabbing my tail from my woven section. I'm putting my needle back on there. So now we are at step 11. Oh yeah. Haha. Don't do that yet. Step 11. Okay, so you are going to remove your stopper from the top of your beadwork. I do that. It depends on how you've tied yours on, but I just did one loop around mine. So I'm just sticking my needle in there to loosen it up to get that out of there. So now you're going to hide this thread down into your beadwork. I gave like a little map for this. You don't need to follow that exactly. It is not that important exactly where it goes. You just want to bury it in here somewhere. So I'm just going to go down through some random section that I know I will not likely be using, because I'm using kind of these edges in the next few steps. Ow, I got a paper cut there yesterday and I just pushed my thread against it. Can you see how angry that looks? Oh, yeah, that was a wicked paper cut. It feels great. Feels really good. Paper cuts go so well with beading because of how the thread pushes into it. Just in case you guys didn't know. Just, thought I'd share that with you. Okay, so now we are doing step 12. Which is funny because I have the picture of the stopper still sitting on step 12. So you can ignore that picture because that is wrong. I will have to edit that in kits moving forward. Anywho, so we're adding our thread that is down here onto this. I am going to cut this off so that it is no longer visible. I'm going to try and make this the inside of my piece just because there is that little bit of thread sitting there. So this is the fun part. You get to zip it up. So I'm going to fold the two sides towards each other. You can see that this bead is the out bead and I'm coming out of an indented bead, okay? This is to make it nice and easy for you to zip it up. So you are going to keep going up through each of the sticky outy beads. So you're going to be alternating sides, working our way up this ladder basically. And you don't have to pull it tight right away. It's going to make it easier for you to grab each side if you do not pull it tight yet. So you're basically zipping this up, using your tail from your woven section. So when I'm about a third of the way up, now I'm going to hold this nice and tight with my thumb, between my thumb and my pointer finger, and I'm pulling it so you can see it's all zipped up, okay? Through. We're just going to keep zipping up this edge. Random note, I did reenactment stuff at some of like the historic sites in Canada and the US, and the dresses that the women wore back then had all these like hooks and eyes and stuff to like, and whale boning. Ugh. But the hooks and eyes, this reminds me of like, I've never been married, so I've never had to wear a wedding dress, but I've seen my fair share of them get done up. And those costumes I used to wear at the reenactment stuff remind me of this. This zippy uppy, slow, patient stuff reminds me of that. Yep, you're welcome for that fun little side note. So now we're at the top. We've pulled it. You can see my little thread is wanting to be misbehaving here. So why is that misbehaving quite so badly? I'm just going to... It went up through two beads on this side. That's why it's misbehaving quite so badly. So I can pull on this and get that back out of there and have it going the right direction through that other bead, instead of it looking like it all started coming apart at the top, because it didn't. It's just I was threading it incorrectly. So, and I did it again. That's hilarious. Up through this one. There we go. Now, just to make sure this is zipped up, I'm going to go back down through these a little bit. And up over here, just because that looked a little loose. Okay, so we are at the top of our piece. We have our little tube with our fun little fringe. Oh, of course I just hit my beads. Why wouldn't I? So we've zipped it up. We're good. We've got that nice and snug. I wove it around a little bit. You can either do a little knot on your thread bridge here or just do another little weave. I'm a fan of doing a little weave. So we're going to do that. Now we are adding our wire guard. So this is what it looks like. If you don't have any of the plier dudes to open that, you can sometimes grab your scissors and do a little open of it. I suggest, if you're going to be into beadwork, get some little needle nose pliers so that you can open up these findings at the bottom of them to properly attach them. So I'm not going to do that right away. I want mine attached after. So I'm coming out the top of the beadwork. One of the diagrams, diagram 14, is kind of the picture looking at it like this. And what I'm going to do is attach my wire guard so it's going across from side to side. Okay. Now this one's squeezed a little tight, so I'm just going to open mine up a little bit. Yep, that looks like it'll fit a little bit better. They're pretty pliable, so don't stress when you're needing to make it bigger or smaller. So we're just going to lay our thread down in this wire guard and go basically across to the other side. And again, people, don't panic. It's fine. It doesn't need to be perfect. It will generally sit in the right spot. And when you're first laying it down, you can kind of see I'm a little closer this side. Oops, a little closer that side than I want to be. So I'm actually then going to center it by coming over this way one bead when I go back up, because you're going to go either left or right to be able to go back up through it, so it centers over the two beads. Sorry, I keep slipping out of frame, but my camera's like right at my nose. When you are doing this, you have a step-by-step paper instruction in front of you, which will be very helpful to completing this process. Now we're going over and back down through the other side. Now that's 2 times across my thread bridge. You want to make sure your thread is sitting in thread bridge, my wire guard. You want to make sure your thread is sitting in that wire guard. You can go back and forth twice or 3 times, whatever is making you feel more comfortable. I feel like this is going to be fine. Twice feels nice and snug. So now I'm going to weave down through my beadwork a bit. And when you're doing that, so that you don't have to create a knot, you're going to do a little circle around at one point so that the thread works back or pushes back on itself. And kind of weave back and forth. I'm like going through too many beads here. I have a lot of light on me at the moment, which all these reflections. So I went down through that one. So now I'm going to go up through the one that's next to it. And back down through the one I was just at, just to create a little bit of resistance on that thread. So it's kind of pulling against itself, if that makes sense. I know I don't always make sense, but my knowledge came from somewhere. So yeah, just weave down a little bit. Oh, that's what happens when you pierce your finger. So that's nice and tight on there. I'm going to cut my thread nice and close so you can't see it. And there we go. We've got our fringe. Boo, 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 boo. I'm gonna put that on there like that. Boo, 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 boo. And we're gonna close it. Ta-da! So this is our Willow beaded earring kit. You can find patterns for this to go along with this video on my Instagram. Nope. In my shop. There's a link on my Instagram. My shop's on Etsy. It's the same name. And you can also find kits in a couple different colorways. I hope you enjoyed. See you later.